Hamas has called for peace. It's astonishing, but let's figure out why, what, how, and for what reason. If you want to learn a language, go to a country where it's spoken. If you want to understand the psychology of a people, you need to find a wife and endure for at least a year, if you can, of course. None of these folk wisdoms work in Israel, a country where, with a population of 7 million, there are 14 million mutually exclusive opinions. Nevertheless, if you listen to a few proud Israelis, you can come up with some kind of statistical average. Well, you know that opinion can change in a second. The person who just expressed it might have the exact opposite opinion a moment later, and they'll express that opposite opinion with the same conviction as before. The Russian-speaking Rabbi Mikhail Finkel has 105,000 subscribers. He lives in Israel. He talks about any topic. He's talking about everything from the world's creation to a current tank attack on Gaza.
We are on the eve of the final battles for the city of Gaza, not for the Gaza Strip, the Gaza Strip. It is already completely controlled by Israel from the very border with Israel, up to and including the city of Rafah, or Rafah as it is sometimes called. This is a border city with the Egyptian Sinai, beyond which stand Egyptian border guards aiming their rifles at their Arab brothers. I confirm.
When during the Intifada, the Arabs of Abgosh, there is such a village near Jerusalem, defended their restaurants and shops, which were full of Jews, so that they would come, not be afraid, and buy. The guns were specifically pointed toward the Arab settlements. To us, the Jews, they said, welcome, and to spend your money in our businesses? I've visited a few times. My brother lives near Saratzian.
They were planted there for two reasons. The first, as I already mentioned, is the banditry of most residents of the Gaza Strip. And the second reason is to use them as a battering ram against Israel, to constantly undermine Israel. Gaza remains, with 40% already taken by the Israeli army. Many areas are under our control. And now preparations are underway, preparations for the assault. These are the details of the preparations for this assault that I would like to share with you today. And
describe. Let's listen to Ravin, who will describe the details of the upcoming military operation.
So, my dear friends, how are we going to take this city of Gaza? The city of Gaza is very heavily fortified. There, the last remaining Hamas militants and our hostages are left. The very ones that the Hamas fighters brutally captured and took away on October 7th. Most of these hostages are civilians, not military. Many of them were attending a music festival. How are we going to do this? At the moment, today, our command is carrying out an operation called Operation Towers. For example, yesterday we destroyed the largest high-rise in Gaza from the air. It collapsed and folded, and that's what we're going to keep doing now. All the high-rises will be blown up. There are no people in these apartment buildings. What's there? And why is Israel blowing them up? And why are we being accused of waging war in a brutal way? These are observation decks. From the tall buildings occupied by Hamas militants, you can see far and wide what's happening. They can see the positions of the Israeli army. In these high rises, there are sniper nests that shoot at our troops. That's why it's simple. We won't expose ourselves, whether helicopters, planes, or drones come from above. They strike in such a way that the building structure can't withstand it, and the building collapses and is destroyed. Every day, more and more people are leaving the Gaza Strip. In Arabic, our army gives warnings through loudspeakers and by phone notifications. What kind of communication are we providing to the Gaza Strip and its residents?
Let me explain. Israel provides the Gaza Strip with telephone communication. They know all the phone numbers, who uses them, their locations, and more. And Israel, that is, either call or send short message service messages in Arabic, of course, warning where and what we will do in 6 hours, sometimes 4 hours. Why, so as not to kill. Of course, the terrorists leave too, but we still try not to kill civilians. I understand how it sounds, like you killed 724,831 children there, and so on. Guys, take this with a grain of salt, watch and listen to it. Just a little Just air out your brains a bit before you start listening to Arab propaganda. Plus, we're dropping leaflets with the same information, including which streets to take and how to get to the nearest camp. Refugees gather where there's water, food, medicine, and essentials, including schools for children, just to be clear, and kindergartens too, nurseries as well. By the way, there is no shortage of food, no hunger in Gaza. This is well documented. For example, Hamas takes food supplies from the residents and hides them, opens them up, and then claims that the population is starving. Like the party officials in Leningrad during World War II who were getting fat from eating so much salmon and caviar that they just couldn't take it anymore. That was when the city was suffocating from hunger. In the same way, the Hamas members are stuffing themselves while taking away everything that could feed the sick and children from their neighbors.
The tower operation will continue until no buildings remain in Gaza City, or specifically the 60% we don't yet control. And in order to prevent Hamas snipers from watching us, shooting at us, and Hamas spotters from showing where our army is moving, as it is written in the book of ancient Chinese art of war, the main thing in war is to deceive.
It's called something else, but the essence is correct. To mislead the enemy, to create the emotions and feelings you need, and to make them not understand what you want and are going to do. And when
the Israeli army built an exact replica of the city of Gaza in Israel, just like they do in Hollywood, right? An exact replica of the city of Gaza. Every house, every street, every alley. And the soldiers memorize where everything is. So when they go in after the airstrikes, when there are no civilians left, only Hamas militants will remain. After the artillery preparation, after the armored units, tanks, and armored vehicles go in, only then will the infantry units follow. Again, sappers will go in first because a lot of the area is mined, and they will have to clear all of that. Advancing slowly will keep our soldiers safe. Unlike many other armies that don't know the new city, our soldiers will enter this city knowing it by heart. You heard right, our soldiers will enter the city of Gaza knowing it by heart. Pretty impressive, isn't it? Because the training for the city of Gaza will take place in this mock-up, a full-scale mock-up. Where is it full scale? Houses, shops, streets, alleys. It's not a mini version, but an exact replica of Gaza. Our soldiers and officers will know this city by heart beforehand. That's very important to understand. After the reservists finish training on this model of the city of Gaza, the operation will begin. And of course, when almost all the residents of the city of Gaza leave the city, only Hamas militants will remain there. We are doing all we can to save and evacuate civilians using our agents inside Hamas. It should be understood that within this organization, which is terrorist, criminal, and considered as such by most countries in the world, we have a recruited agent. That's why we always know where Hamas commanders gather and track all Hamas leaders' movements. And we eliminate them very precisely and clearly, knowing their routes, their safe houses, and everything else. They can no longer trust each other because they know that at every meeting, wherever they are, our eyes and our ears are there. Mossad agents, Israeli intelligence agents, Arabs working for us, and the most honorable representatives of their people who are fighting against the tyranny of the Hamas terrorist group.
I think that besides our eyes, we also have high-tech that Hamas, well, I would even say, doesn't even suspect exists.
Furthermore, many countries, while trying to appease their newly made Arab citizens, are preparing an arms embargo against Israel. And yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced the creation of a special department, which he called the Ammunition Directorate. In other words, to make sure that we are not caught off guard, that we always have weapons, and that we are not affected by any outrageous decision from Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands, or anyone else, we will have a huge stockpile of ammunition, weapons, and everything else. Against this backdrop, Israel is becoming increasingly independent. It is already starting to do almost everything on its own, creating and launching new weapons factories, so as not to depend on anyone. This is a new level.
A part of the territory that used to be All of this is our historical land and so on. But nevertheless, if we speak in terms of modern law, after World War I, the League of Nations organization finally recognized the right of the Jewish people to their own state, and it allocated a rather large piece to England. Part of this historical land of Israel, which included the territory of modern Israel, the Palestinian Authority, the Gaza Strip, Jordan, southern Lebanon, and Syria. England promised to provide the opportunity to create a Jewish state on these lands, to allow Jews to come here and rebuild the country. We have already talked about the fact that, in reality, Jewish colonization, that is, Jewish settlement of Jerusalem and the land of Palestine. Palestine means Jerusalem. When someone talks about creating an independent Palestine, basically just a few decades ago, well, about 40 years ago, exactly, it sounded like establishing an independent Israel in the mid-19th century. At that time, much of Palestine was uninhabitable. The inland areas were either desert or entirely mountainous. Even 500 years before that, by the Arabs and then the Turks, the forests had been completely cut down. The entire coastal strip, practically from Haifa to Tel Aviv, was a swamp. In these swamps, malaria mosquitoes bred. And most of the population, which was small at the time, by the end of the 19th century, according to Ottoman records, the neighboring population was 240,000 people. In all this vast territory, the Ottomans did not single out this land. There were several provinces, 240,000 people and 25,000 Jews here, hardly anything. They started restoring the forests, the climate changed, and Arab immigration began, because first the Turks, then the English. Since Vladimir's territory is flourishing, they need workers. They started bringing in Arab migrant workers. Back then, they weren't called migrant workers. It was just moving from one part of the Ottoman Empire to another, or from one part of the British colonial system from Iraq, which the British also acquired. So that's how it was, and in general, Russia and the Arab population. But the English had absolutely no intention of creating any kind of Jewish state. Part of Lebanon, part of Syria, which were given to the French at that time. Or in Jordan, they created a puppet Arab state by placing the Hashemite dynasty there. The name of the dynasty is Hashemites, which was foreign to the local population. And it relied heavily on British bayonets. And all of this was hostile to Israel. All these entities, besides that, the British organized Jewish pogroms starting from 1921, then again in 1929. This is all documented. The Jews practically restored this land, and then there was Arab immigration. Then the British started the persecution, first persecution, then mass murder of Jews in Europe with the Germans. They completely banned the entry of Jews into Palestine, even though that was exactly what they received the mandate for, to govern this territory, precisely citing those Arab uprisings and pogroms, which they themselves organized, as the reason.
For those who don't know, in the 1920s, long before Hitler, the British organized pogroms in Palestine, that is, in Judea, to put it in our terms. And then, when Jews started fleeing from Hitler to other countries, the British closed entry for Jews, citing the dissatisfaction of the local population. At that time, Roosevelt banned the entry of Jews into the United States, even though Hitler offered to let them all go. And Roosevelt's wife, Eleonora, a charming lady, wrote in her diary, which of course smelled of perfume, that everything already reeked of Jews anyway. And now they're trying to bring in new ones too. The Jews were left to Hitler, and they told us they didn't need them. Of course, no one persuaded Hitler to kill 6 million Jews, but he wanted to expel them, and no one would take them. And
given to Egypt. Egyptian troops crossed this border between Palestine and Egypt with the Sinai Peninsula, invaded Israeli territory, and moved toward Tel Aviv. At some point, there were Jewish kibbutzim, Jewish settlements that were destroyed by the Egyptian troops. The residents, too, some of them were killed, some fled, and at some point, the Egyptian troops were stopped by the Jewish forces. And right there, where the newborn Jewish army stopped the Egyptian armored columns. And right there, where the newborn Jewish army stopped the Egyptian armored columns, that newborn Jewish army. Stop the Egyptian armored columns, that newborn Jewish army stopped the Egyptian armored columns. And there the newborn Jewish army stopped the Egyptian armored columns. The moment the newborn Jewish army stopped the Egyptian armored columns, the moment the newborn Jewish
Stop the Egyptian armed forces. Let me explain. When the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics declared that it would land troops or strike Israel with an atomic bomb, the United States officially stated that it would not object. Well, like Biden with Ukraine, we won't intervene, we won't intervene. Practically.
The patronage over this Palestinian project from the hands of the KGB, who had weakened in their unequal struggle with world imperialism and got busy enriching themselves, temporarily had no time for Palestine, for this Palestinian cause. The government, the European Union, basically the European government countries, picked it up and started transferring huge amounts of money that used to be transferred by the Soviet Union. Now the Europeans started transferring them. By the way, the Arabs financed the Palestinian Authority, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and so on, in all its forms, much less than the Europeans and Americans do. The State Department even established a Department for Palestinian Affairs. So in many ways, the Palestinian issue is being used right now. It is being continued by Western, mostly leftist organizations, not only organizations, as a way to put pressure on Israel, or rather, as a way to destroy Israel. The old-fashioned anti-Semites who fought against us, from the Catholic Church to the communists, want the destruction of the State of Israel for demographic reasons. They support this leftist movement. They support the fight, in this case against Israel, under the pretext of the war in the Gaza Strip. And then there are the Arabs, or more than just them. There's an interesting mix here. It's not even just the Arabs, but global Islam, more precisely, global jihadist Islam. Because with the Arabs, for the most part, our relations have improved. Because, first of all, the Arab regimes are too... First of all, it's impossible to destroy Israel in a military confrontation. And secondly, it threatens their political stability. Because, as we talked about before, about national aeronautics and space administration, these Arab socialist leaders, Saddam Hussein and so on, all these groups of Israel's enemies, when they came to power in their countries, they overthrew the previous, just as anti-Israel or even more anti-Israel regimes that had fought against Israel. One of the pretexts was that these countries were not fighting Israel enough. That's why it's dangerous. If you push too hard with propaganda against Israel, you have to destroy Israel. If you destroy Israel, then you'll be held accountable. Therefore, since we can't destroy Israel, all these regimes in the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan as well, they will quickly abandon this idea. On the other hand, you can get a lot from Israel, starting with security.
Avram Shmulevich believes that the Sunnis abandoned the idea of destroying Israel because they simply can't destroy it. I think he's wrong. They never actually intended to destroy Israel, but rather to fight with it forever, telling their citizens that their problems in life are because of Israel, not because of the thieves in their own government. Having a scapegoat to blame is very convenient, so why would you give that up? I think that the Sunnis realized they would gain a lot from a trade alliance with the United States and Israel, including defense technologies against Russia and nuclear Iran. But the reason isn't as important as the result. Europe is against Israel, while the Sunnis support it, or at the very least are neutral. And here's how Israel destroys tall buildings in Gaza. Want to see? Stay tuned for more details.
What else is left in the Gaza Strip?
As a result,
But the Israeli military is bombing what they call high-rise buildings in the Gaza Strip, one building after another.
The reasons have already been explained, but in addition, Israel is making this area uninhabitable. All right now.
In the early hours of dawn, the Israeli military announced a humanitarian zone in Al-Mawasi, Khan Yunis, Gaza, as military operations in the enclave are set to expand. The Israeli military spokesperson for Arab media, Avikai Adria, said that the zone would include infrastructures such as field hospitals, water pipelines, desalination facilities, and food supplies. Palestinians say that there is no safe zone at all in the Gaza Strip.
Israeli leaders, including the defense minister, warned Hamas to accept Israel's terms to end the war or Gaza City will face the same fate as Rafah. The comments came after Hamas said it was ready to release all the hostages at once to end the war. In a statement, Netanyahu's office outlined 5 conditions for ending the war. These include the release of all hostages, the disarmament of Hamas, the demilitarization of Gaza, and the establishment of Israeli security control and civil administration in Gaza.
The Hamas leadership made an offer to Netanyahu. They would hand over all 40-plus hostages, meaning both the living and the bodies, and Israel would halt its offensive.
In a post, Donald Trump wrote that if Hamas releases all remaining hostages, the situation could change quickly. Israeli media report that the Israel Defense Forces Chief of Staff plans to warn Netanyahu's government that there will be no choice but to impose military rule in the Gaza Strip if the plan to capture Gaza City is carried out. It is reported that Zamir is opposed to this step and will warn Netanyahu's government about the military consequences.
I don't know if the Hamas leadership is ready to disarm and leave their last stronghold, fortified with hundreds of tunnels and thousands of bombs. This is Gaza City. Israel is ready to proceed. This time without the restrictions that were imposed during the first part of the operation. They called the operation Gideon's Chariot. Now they say Gideon's Chariot 1 because what is happening now they call Chariot 2 subtitles. The difference is as follows. The goal of the operation is the complete capture of Gaza City. That means 130,000 reservists have been mobilized in Israel. The population is being evacuated. The entire infrastructure in Gaza is being seized. About 40% of the city has already been cleared. The operation is aimed at the total elimination of Hamas, the destruction of the last pockets of resistance, and the demilitarization of the city. After the capture, complete destruction of infrastructure, relocation of most of the population, and radical reconstruction of the urban environment are expected. If the first part, Gideon Odin, focused on encircling and flushing out Hamas, then the second is aimed at the total destruction of the resistance. Moreover, the city is surrounded from all sides so that escape is impossible. This is being done on the eve of the United Nations session, where France, the Netherlands, and other well-wishers are planning to recognize a Palestinian Arab Muslim state on the territory of Israel. Well, Jews, that's it. Palestine never existed. It's fictional. Historically, Palestine referred to the Israelites. Yes, the solution to the Palestine problem was actually the problem of Israel, the problem of the Jews. Well, all right. So they stole the name and let them have it. What's important is something else. What's important is that Israel finally decided to act the way everyone else does. The British, for example, when they bombed Dresden. And so on and so forth. I won't even mention everything else right now, like how the Soviet Union used to bomb everything in its path. residential, non-residential, did not provide food, send medicine, or take responsibility for children missing school at that time. All right, ladies and gentlemen. And the world is quite biased against Israel because it's inhabited by strange people, strange individuals. They are called Jews, also known as Ivri, Hebrew, and by various other biblical names. But the point is this: for some reason they are the chosen people, and the rest just can't accept that. Maybe they don't think that way. They have something else in their heads. In their minds, Jews are lousy, or Jews lisp, or Jews will sell you out for a penny, but aren't they themselves ready to sell you out for half a penny? Yeah, so Jews, they say, will sell you out for a penny. But the most important thing is this. Most people feel their own inadequacy, and that's why they hate Jews. And the more Nobel Prizes Jews receive, the more they create medical drugs, the more they create iPhones and other startups, the greater the inferiority. And the more what is called envy. That is wild, completely unfounded, and even shameful envy, which, of course, needs to be covered up with some clever, beautiful words. See you.